Hello and welcome to the latest today's edition of SupplierEdge webinar. I am super excited to have Scott Davidson back with us. He was our very first SupplierEdge webinar that we did, and his information helping veteran entrepreneurs is actually one of the most popular events that we've had yet. So when he offered to also give another talk on understanding and really leveraging the GSA schedule, we couldn't help but bring him back on. So really excited. I'm actually a little under the weather today, so I'm going to do as little talking as I can and really just want to pass this off to Scott right away to let him give his presentation. I've looked over the slides. They're great. Scott, is there anything else I can do? I'd really love just to pass this off to you and let you run from here.
Absolutely, Dustin. I know you're I want you to save your voice for the rest of the day. I completely understand.
It's all good. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you. Well, welcome, everybody. One just quick note, any questions you have, please just type them in. We already have several. I'll answer them at the end of the presentation as we move through this. There'll be a lot of content in a pretty quick manner. How this is laid out, just to let you know, the initial part of the brief will be some basic 101 GSA, just in case we have anybody on the call who's not familiar with schedules. And then we're going to dive into actually how we go into just different type of opportunity development specific to the GSA schedule, look at teaming strategies, and then, of course, go to opportunity forecasting and give you certain links so you can take a look at what's going to be out there in the 2015 forecast that's going to be put on GSA schedules. That was actually just updated last week, right before Thanksgiving. So with that, I'm going to jump into the initial. There we go. Again, bottom line, everyone's going to have content, copy of this content. We're going to go over the basics of what a GSA schedule is. Again, this will be done quickly. For everybody else who could read the slide, we'll get into the meat of the presentation. Bottom line, though, GSA schedule, it's a multiple award schedule contract, an MAS vehicle, or a federal supply schedule, as some people call it. GSA schedules it's a long-term vehicle. They're called evergreen contracts. They have a 5-year base period, and then there's 3 5-year option periods. So, again, what normally happens, though, just to let you know, if anybody knows, we do option renewals at that 20-year mark. You will be vetted again, but basically what happens, if you go through the process and you're okay, they'll renew your schedule for another 20 years. It's a little bit more in-depth than your normal option renewal period, but just to let you know, the contract basically does go on in perpetuity. If you choose to continue to meet the requirement to provide the information, your GSA schedule will last as long as you'd like it to last, for that matter. The best part about GSA schedule, especially when it comes to your strategy, is that they're allowed to be used government-wide. One of the best and most popular reasons the vehicle is used is because every government agency can purchase off the GSA schedule to get to you as a product or service vendor. If it's the Department of Defense, all the way down to the Battlefield Monuments Commission, as long, they can buy from you off of your GSA schedule, as compared to other vehicles out there that, are just particular to a certain agency, like C-40 will only buy from Navy, things of that nature. So that's another benefit to actually the GSA schedule. Overall, again, it's an empty contract, and what I mean by empty, it's quite simply, you'll get awarded a GSA schedule, and then you're going to be, you'll bid on task orders underneath that schedule as they either to be developed or you respond to them. But basically, it's your license to hunt on what would be considered opportunities only posted for the GSA schedule. And, of course, task orders are issued against it, and then there's an unlimited ceiling, which means that the award could be any amount. There is no limit ceiling to your actual vehicle. Next slide. Okay. Best part, again, work can be performed globally. There's different pricing structures for how your contract's set up. You could choose to have, OCONUS or CONUS rates. You could also choose to have on-site and off-site rates. Again, it's really depending on how you're set up and what you can prove historically as a company about your pricing. One quick piece, though, just to let you know, and you should be familiar with GSA enforces your pricing is based upon historic invoicing and your best price that you've provided to commercial customers. That's an overall top-level look at how your pricing is established. If you've gone through the process already, you're familiar with it. If not, but that's how your basis of award is. And also, of course, that you can never, during the life of the contract, you can't sell lower commercially in most cases than what you sell to the federal government for like services and products. Level of effort contracts that are on the GSA schedule only can be firm fixed price, labor hour, or T&M. No cost reimbursable contracts are allowed on GSA schedule simply because the price reduction clause, things where it would be so difficult to track the basis of award pricing that GSA doesn't accept it. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. I'm sorry, everybody seems to lag there for a second. Okay. Just another quick overview about the schedules. So there's actually two types of schedules that people didn't realize. There are the GSA schedules, which handles all of the bulk of any type of service or product the federal government buys. There's over $40 billion annually in sales. That's just for GSA schedules. It doesn't include other vehicles like 882 Stars, things of that nature. This is just for straight GSA schedule buys. Then there's the VA FSS schedules. They're considered FSS. They're not considered GSA schedules. The VA schedules are actually monitored out of Hines, Illinois. They're only related to medical supplies and services that are bought on behalf of the Department of Veterans Affairs. So there are a difference. There's a difference when it comes to the IFF that's paid. But I just want to make sure everyone knows that if you ever are, for some reason, going into the medical supply field and you're transitioning over from your normal, or services for that matter, you're looking into that, there are a different set of circumstances when it comes to applying for that. Also, the proposal process is a lot different than you would look at from the GSA side compared to the FSS side, simply because they actually still use paper proposals for the VA, whereas everything's electronically tracked. So just to give you an idea that you have to send in your paper proposal, it gets put on a shelf, and then when they get to it, they review it. So the lead time is a lot greater, and it's actually, they mark it up by 10. So just to give you an idea of the differences of one extreme to the other, how those organizations are run when it comes to schedules. Okay. An idea of the landscape for GSA schedules. 80% of all GSA schedule holders are small businesses, and they only represent 36% of the sales. So if you kind of think of what the difference is there, that the majority, 20%, the other 20% control the majority sales, which are all large businesses. That gives you an idea of how things are being procured and where the competition looks like. The reason is of course that a lot of very large acquisitions that take place on the GSA schedules are set up for things like that, where the SAICs of the world, the Lockheeds, have big box dollar item buys, which drives why those sales are there's such a disparity between the two. So that's one of the reasons why you see a number. It doesn't discourage small business because there's still a great amount of sales. There's still, it comes out to be several $1 billion, of course, of what is sold to the small business community, so don't be discouraged by that. But the reason why it is skewed is because of the large acquisitions that do take place in the schedule. And just there's over 19,000 MAS contractors for FY 2014 at the end of the year. That just basically shows you your competition. And then in general, I always put the IT out there, what they did. $14 billion went through IT. It's the largest GSA schedule as far as sales go. And out of the $14 billion, $6.6 billion of it was through service. So the other remaining piece, of course, is through software, just to give you an idea. And then, of course, over $28 million products and services are offered through the GSA schedule, just to give you an idea of what's available out there. The next slide. Okay. So we'll talk about, now we'll get into GSA schedule opportunity development. And this is strictly for services at this time. Just so everybody is familiar, as they know, RFQs are solicited through multiple means for GSA schedule. Everybody always thinks e-buy. That is the main portal where where the agencies will post their GSA requisitions. And that's what you're going to see as far as the majority of the time. Again, the bulk of that does come out there. However, there are additional solutions that are out there the government does use. The ITSS, which is the GSA IT Solution Shop, they actually do post RFQs on that as a certain platform that you can respond to. So if you don't have access to that, of course, if you're not an IT-70 schedule holder, and it's not just IT-70. We've seen opportunities be posted there for the O3 FAC maintenance schedule from Mobis, things of that nature. It's something that you should look into and register for and absolutely make sure that you are monitoring it. They will post, when I say they will, GSA uses that heavily if they're doing the solicitation on behalf of another agency. So if GSA, Assisted Acquisition Solution, is actually going to be the agency that's going to be, let's say, soliciting something on behalf of the Air Force, which is the one I'm referring to that we recently worked with, they'll put that on that portal for you to look at. You have to have a schedule, of course, to sign up for it, so you would just go through that piece and go look at ITSS. But just to give you an idea, though, that it's not always e-buy. Also, interesting enough, there are opportunities that are GSA only that are sometimes synopsized on FedBizOps. They're published, and they're not going to say – they're basically going to say you have to use your GSA schedule pricing on it. It's for whatever reason the contracting officer decided to use it as an acquisition strategy, but just to let you know, there are things on there that do show up on FedBizOps, so don't discard that as far as things that you're looking for. Absolutely look at FedBizOps, even in your normal search agents. You'll find some things out there that are going to be for GSA schedule buy. Very few and far between, but it does show up. And then, of course, the most favorite one is the direct market solicitation. Direct market solicitation is it's kind of straightforward, but it's when the contracting officer will basically email you or two other vendors, and that actually meets the Competition Act whenever it comes to FAR 8.4 for GSA schedules. And that also is a way that you can develop that opportunity where it could come to you. I will say, though, in most of those cases, be very wary if you're not the person who developed that opportunity, because they're just looking to basically satisfy the rule too when it comes to making sure that they post it to the right people. Okay. To continue on opportunity development, GSA schedule was designed for streamlined acquisition. With that in mind, you want to make sure you take into account that the majority of times, anything you're going to see that hits eBuy or any other sites have already probably been pre-worked or pre-marketed by other vendors prior to the publishing. It's very important that if you have to understand the factors behind each of the opportunities to assist in the proper decision-making process for that pursuit. Why I say that is just really take into consideration that it shows up on, say, the eBuy. You didn't hear anything about it. There was no forecasting done. You had no contact with your customer. That's a risk you will take in that sense that you're going to go after it, because most likely somebody else has been on it. I'm not going to say that you can't win it. We've assisted plenty of companies that went ahead and won things, but that's few and far between, and they're anomalies. Most of the time, like I said, they've been pre-worked if they're within a certain range. And when I talk about that is when you look at the turn times, and when I mean turn times, what you really want to take a look at is the response times. That should be driving the decision-making process immediately. You can discard a lot of things, but you can also pull a lot of intelligence out of it. If the RFQ is responded, if it's necessary to be done more than 14 days, again, if you're not the one who pre-worked it, contacted the agency, or you're on a team that has done it, they're really, again, you got to make that judgment call, but I would say it's going to be a wired opportunity. If it's for, unless it's very specific or written for a certain thing, but again, few and far between, you're just kind of doing it. That's a shotgun blast approach. I wouldn't recommend it. If it's less than 21 days and greater than 14, of course, again, it should be considered a potential pursuit at that time, simply because at a 21-day mark, you're right on the border of, the contracting officer has the ability to control this they could do a 3-day turnaround or a 7-day turnaround if they really had somebody in mind. If they don't, and they go ahead and put it out 21 days, that's a pretty good turn time for a vehicle like GSA schedule. Anything above the 21 days, most likely it's going to be, again, you do a little research on it, but it's got a much greater factor that it should be considered open pursuit. You do see 30 and 45-day turns on GSA schedules. Those are ones where obviously it's a new opportunity and it hasn't been pre-marketed or in the acquisition, in the pre-work or pre-acquisition phase, or it's the contracting officer is not happy with the incumbent and they're looking for somebody new. Or the other piece, of course, is that it was originally an open competition, and then it was set aside in the back end of something else. So there's a lot of different factors there. But when you're looking at that long turn time, the longer the better, which means the less likely it's been worked very hard by a certain agency, and they're truly looking for somebody. So just some additional points about that. Simply waiting to bid on those items that show up on an agency site without prior knowledge will most likely lead to a loss. You need to be pre-marketing it to the agencies. You need to be, working your relationship with program managers or anybody else that has content, has access into whatever agency you're focusing on. That's really where your relationship's going to matter. If you can't get into a certain agency, go ahead and use things like their small business liaison offices to establish contact, but get a way into where you're working it. Also look at, look at different teaming, leverage your relationships within that program. So let's say you have, you're already sub to a prime on let's say other multiple contracts. Look at them for that matter and say, hey, do you know somebody in this program? We really would like to be able to, introduce us to work into that. Make sure that you again, work inside of that. Leverage your relationships in order to build that team up or build up that networking and, that you can have the ability then to penetrate that particular market. To go in blindly, again, is the biggest mistake most people make when it comes to, especially on schedules, when you go to prime things. It's just not, again, there might be once in a while you'll win on a particular item, but I would avoid that unless it's, again, it's different. We're talking about service here. I want to make sure we're clear. It's different for product. Product is a much different animal when it comes to penetration. Yes, relationships help, but under a certain threshold of dollar amount, a lot of the times, unless it's very specific type of product, there's a lot of times where you can just go answer the mail and you'll win. But this is directly for services, what I'm referring to for. You're only as strong as your team. I always like to say that, especially if you're a small business, right? So if you're a small business, you really should be looking at the advantages that GSA offers to you that you should be leveraging against other large businesses when you're doing competition. And what I mean by that is that you should look at things like, contractor teaming arrangements. We talk about that, I believe, on the next slide or the next two slides, but I want to make sure that you understand that absolutely leverage your team when it comes to that and build it properly, because there's ways to balance, with the balance, shift the balance of power to you. And again, the one little piece I always tell people, ensure you're responding to all sorts of SWOT and requests for RFIs from government agencies. They will put RFIs out on GSA, on eBuy or, especially on eBuy all the time. Make sure you respond to it, because if you don't, they're not going to steer it properly. If you're a small business, if you have a certain socioeconomic status, make sure first off, that they know you have that. Make sure they know you have a schedule and all the good things that you can steer that, because that's what that's there for. If you don't answer that RFI or source of thought, that absolutely will ensure that most likely it's not going to go your way and they'll have to go open competition. If you're a smaller business and you want to have the ability to be able to do that, don't pass it by. I know all the time I hear people like, yeah, we looked at it, we didn't answer it, and then it goes out to open competition. They're like, well, we don't understand. The contracting officer doesn't know you exist. The program people don't know you exist. You have to make sure that they know you exist. So just to shift gears here before we get to teaming, one other piece of advice, look at state schedule programs as well. Most states will establish mirror programs. They've already established mirror programs of what the GSA schedule will look like. You can do certain buys through your GSA schedule for IT and for law enforcement gear. The states can use that, but they don't like to have to pay GSA, the IFF, for that. They establish their own state term schedules or state multiple award contract schedules. California, Ohio, Texas, New York, they all have similar vehicles to GSA schedule. Look at that and don't miss out on the opportunities at the state level simply because, you don't think that there's opportunity there. They will take your GSA schedule, and they, in fact, on most of the solicitations to get on to a state-level schedule, the first question they ask is, do you have a GSA schedule? And you have to include the pricing in there, and they have two different tracks for how they evaluate your pricing. Absolutely look at the ability. If you have a certain state, whatever state you're in that you legally reside, make sure that you are following that rule because, again, you're missing out on a lot of options and buys for that matter. Same thing, don't overlook it. The other piece, too, is the city levels also buy from similar programs if you have a federal contract. New York City, I know, definitely models itself when they buy, they ask for IT schedules, things of that nature. They flow out of the state program as well. So just consider state if you haven't. There's a lot of money to be made at that state level, and I think it's one of the most overlooked areas that people aren't considering to focus on within their state. Okay. Teaming advantages. So the reason I talk about this or bring this up is it's very important that as a small business, and again, in order to kind of level the playing field, especially your GSA schedule, because if you're a GSA schedule holder, that's it. You're a prime at this point, right? You're going to be doing prime work because that's all, that's where you're bidding on as a prime. So you're going to have to go against also well-established companies, and you want to be able to match them, especially the large businesses who most likely, they have the ability to discount and they have great past performance. GSA has specifically implemented a tool way back that's called a contractor teaming arrangement. What a contractor teaming arrangement is, it's a team that GSA allows that it's a two or more. Everybody has to be a schedule holder to be on the actual CTA team. Allows you guys to team together to give a total solution. And what that means is Company A, Company B, and Company C all have GSA schedules. They may not have the same GSA schedule. One may be law enforcement, one may be IT, one may be MOBIS. They can team together to go after a opportunity that's on a MOBIS contract if there's different areas that each company is strong in that they can provide. What that means is, and why is that important? Number one, because it allows you to perform the total solution. You can also do multiple teamings if you are all IT schedule holders. That's fine. The important part is that, number one, on the contractor side, there is no privity of contract anymore. Everybody is considered a prime on the team. So everybody gets credit for the sales that they have under their CTA. Because what happens is you use your own rates to populate your part of the work share. So if you have 5 FTEs and your other CTA team has 5 FTEs and the other one has 5 FTEs, you get prime sale credit for those 5 FTEs under a CTA. So that's what's great. So you get that for your IFF, you get that for your past performance as a prime, but you also then have the ability, like I said, to have a much stronger team in order to market that to the federal government, and you're all primes. But why is that important on the government side? The government's happy because they can procure a total solution instead of making separate buys for each one of the requirements. But let's be honest, the most important part for the government is that each one of you then, they can check the block for the socioeconomic status for the procurement goal. So this is why it's the incentive to focus on the CTA is because let's say you're going after an agency that has failed, 8A, woman-owned. Let's say they failed in making the woman-owned goals of previous year or currently. They should be at 3%. They're down at 1%, whatever it is. You could build that CTA team where you build yourself multiple woman-owned small businesses with yourself and go in there, and they get that credit, which incentivizes them to, of course, instead of going with a large business, they get the total solution. Most likely the rates will be lower because you're now dealing with massive overhead and G&A rates that are stuffed into large business GSA schedule rates. And then they get the socioeconomic credit for each one of you. So that's why it's an important piece for small businesses to always look to use the CTA teams. Because the CTA, unless it specifically says it in the RFQ that they don't allow CTAs, and sometimes they will put that, but most of the time, majority of the time they won't, you want to go with the CTA with the CTA strategy. And then I just kind of give you what you build your small business team, what it works on. And again, your socioeconomic status is going to be the biggest sell to the federal government in the end of it, because you'll most likely technically be very, you'll be sound because you're using multiple past performances from different companies, which count as prime past performances. So again, look at how that my advice is look at how the socioeconomic goals are for that company, for a small business, even your large business, and then do the CTA so you can satisfy that the contracting officer and go in with, again, a big, strong small business team to incentivize how they buy from you. And this gives you just, again, what it means, the difference between the CTA and the subcontractor. And this is all going to be available on the Dun & Bradstreet website and afterwards where they're going to post this. But, again, like I said, looking at the CTA piece real quick, just to let you know, it's a living document in a sense. When you create a CTA, basically you're going to define the responsibilities of each you and your teammates and how things are worked out for the work share. It's just like doing a subcontract, except that you have different responsibilities. There is no prime and sub. What happens is people become team members and team leads. Team lead, of course, is established as someone who communicates with the federal government. However, because of the way the contract is set up, anybody in the team can speak to has privy of contract directly with the federal customer as well. So, again, things are written into the CTA that prevent certain interaction if they want that, but there's the benefits for small business outweigh any type of risk for that matter. And this just gives you another breakdown chart so you take a look at exactly what the requirements are. Okay. GSA opportunity forecasting. GSA, this is for schedule buys and for PBS. So there is a GSA forecast, the contracting opportunities that's posted. It's updated. It's usually updated by the quarter. The last one was just posted on November 24th. You could see the link down there at the bottom of the page, and you can download it. It'll tell you great things. It'll talk to you about, like it says, if it's going to be a set aside, the acquisition strategy you're looking for, contract type, the value, of course, and when it's going to come out. They'll also let you know who's won what prior to that. So it gives you a good idea, and it's a great piece of market intelligence because then you'll be able to kind of see exactly what you need to find, and it'll help you with forecasting. Yes, there are other open source vehicles out there, but this is probably the most complete that will actually show you what GSA, what agencies are planning for, and how they're going to use it. If it's going to be schedule buy, if it's going to go a different way, but they will. This forecast allows you. And I don't remember, but there's a significant amount of opportunities that are posted on there. So it's a great planning tool for you to look at. So please take a look, and I think they just posted that after the chat. So if you want to go ahead and take that and download that, feel free to look at those types of opportunities. And we're actually coming to the end of it. We're right at the mark for the 30 minutes, but just some quick hits. As you're bidding, and it's great you're doing GSA schedule work, don't forget compliance, okay? Compliance is the biggest thing that I see as far as that's been the showstopper. The GSA IG report was just posted today, and it was the highest number of pre-award and post-award audits in the history of GSA in this last fiscal year and quarter is taking place right now for things of pricing compliance, labor category mapping, things of that nature. It is currently at the all-time high. So although there may be 19,000 schedule holders, GSA is starting to take a look more because there's a lot more pressure from agencies to make sure that people are getting the right price. The other thing is that's an issue is that a lot of competitors are calling the IG, and not even calling the IG, but the GSA OIG has an anonymous web tip site that they can go to, and it seems that there's a good push there that people are reporting their competitors on there. Instead of protesting them, they report them to the OIG if they find something. And yes, there's whistleblowers that are involved there, but a lot of the cases that I've been involved with recently have been from competitors basically saying that they know that this person is not using the lowest commercial prices, or there's something wrong with their basis of award pricing, or et cetera. So that's just something to really look at. Make sure that you're mapping your labor categories correctly and you're not backing your rates in when you build your price. That's 101 type work when it comes to anything with GSA schedule pricing. Ensure that you're doing that because, again, make sure your people qualify. That also meets the thing. The minimum requirements are there for a reason. Unless you have substitution, make sure that your people are meeting those requirements, because if not, it's considered defective pricing to the federal government, and they're going to come after you with false claims tax stuff and things of that nature. Also, make sure you're tracking your basis of award customer, and that you're not selling your labor categories at a lower price commercially than what's on your GSA schedule. And, of course, the most important thing that we get a lot, and it's 100%, yes, being a subcontractor to a prime contractor, regardless of whoever the end user is a commercial transaction, and GSA will view it that way. So just, again, make sure, although as you grow and you're doing great things, always keep compliance in the back. You may win a lot of, you may win a lot of task orders and do well, but keep in mind that they do come look. And when they do come look, eventually you never know who could call on you. It's unfortunate, but they do have these tools to allow it. Just be aware that these types of things are what is taking place.
Well, that was all just awesome information. I learned a ton, Scott. Thank you so, so much. Every time I hear you talking, I'm going, oh, all of a sudden GSA scheduled stuff means so much more to me. I've got a much better insight. So I think I speak for everyone when we say thank you so much for the incredible overview there. So before we get into Q&A, though, I thought I would just let everyone know that we have one more Supplier Edge this year. We are going to have Julia Hubble of the WBDC talking about leveraging women-owned status. She's great. We've believe we've worked with her in some Chicago events and things like that. We're really excited to have her next week. So if you haven't registered, consider registering there at dnb.com/supplier. So with that said, Scott, we have a few questions. There was a question by Jennifer Hawks that thought I would start with. It says, are the ITSS and the eBuy portals mutually exclusive related to opportunities released?
They are not. Just to let you know, they are not. There are things that will be posted on ITSS that do not show on eBuy. So everybody needs to make sure that they understand that. Again, it doesn't happen a lot, but if the Assistant Acquisition Solution likes to use the ITSS portal, and so just let everybody know what AAS is, Assistant Acquisition Service or Assistant Acquisition Solution. That is GSA's basically. It's a government-run organization. It's a part of GSA. They are actually an agency within GSA that can go in and take over and run acquisitions from cradle to grave for any government agency for a fee. And what happens is, let's just say you have the Department of the Army, and I'll give you the example because this is exactly what we recently did something for a customer for was there was a contracting agency with the Army that they were overwhelmed. They just moved from a BRAC. They didn't have the contracting infrastructure in place as a new area. What happened was they contacted AAS under GSA and said, hey, can you run all these acquisitions for us? Because GSA has all these people with warrants that can run anything, GSA schedule, et cetera. And they negotiated what is eventually, it's a percentage of what the total amount of the contracts are. And that's, again, government-to-government negotiation. Nobody sees that piece. What happens is once AAS gets that, they become the contracting officers, and then they go ahead and they solicit things on how they want to solicit the opportunity, and it's going to be through the GSA schedule. With that in mind, though, how they run it is they run the full acquisition, they do the solicitation, they get the responses. They will turn the technical piece over to the program people, whoever that the agency is. For this was the Department of the Army, and then they'll get their feedback through, and then give them, and then they'll make a decision on who makes the win. Real quick, why that's important, and that's a big piece of your business development, which I wanted to make sure. Understand that as a contracting folks, you guys can go ahead. And contact AAS and say, hey, I have an opportunity. Can you help me here? What happens is AAS, 99% of the time, they rely on private business to drive them into a solution area where they need to contact. We had something a couple of years back in Ohio, right at Patterson Air Force Base, where we had a customer came to us, a vendor, and said, hey, how do I get them to use the GSA schedule? What we did was, it was above a certain dollar threshold. We contacted the Assistant Acquisition Solution folks in the area and said, hey, listen, I got somebody who needs some help. AAS actually went out to the Air Force contracting folks and did a presentation and said, here's how I can help you, and here's what we can do for you. And they actually used AAS and contracted with them and went ahead and put that solicitation over, and they were able to put the things on the GSA schedule, and the actual vendor won because they had the best solution, of course, but they won because they were able to do it and get it through that vehicle. So AAS is a great untapped tool, and they will actually work with you, and then you hand them off, and then they go government to government, and then, it's just something to definitely use. Okay, do you have any other questions?
1 second. Yeah, no, I'm with you, Scott. There was, we're running really low on time. There was one more question that I thought we would take and run from there. Rachel Hankerson came on, and she had the question around, her question is regarding mapping labor forces. She's, one slide stated that to map labor categories correctly, is there a template to use? That's what she asked, just to determine your correct mapping?
There are templates that are available out there that you can purchase. The bottom line is it really becomes your pricing person really knows should have to map them. Like I said, you don't want to back anybody into the rates. When you map them accurately, you want to make sure at a minimum the labor category maps properly. You're looking at the functional responsibility. Because as you know, GSA schedule, right, when an agency goes ahead and they solicit, they put out an RFQ, the agency is not going to know your labor categories. They're going to put out what their general labor categories they feel map. You have to map into the labor categories. So they may say, all right, I need a program support specialist. Now, and they're going to give a description of that program support specialist. You have to look at your labor categories and say, well, my person with this functional responsibility maps well. So, because what happens is it becomes a part of, does the person qualify? You can't necessarily, and this is why it's very important how you write your labor category descriptions. They should be fairly ambiguous for that matter. They need to map in functional description. You can't put an admin assistant into an IT developer stage, right? You can't, if they need, like, let's say a software developer, you can't put like an admin assistant into that. It has to map and make sense that the functional responsibilities meet. The other piece is you have to, if for some reason the GSA or whoever solicited the RFQ doesn't put minimum education requirements, you have to still meet your minimum education requirements in the schedule. Schedule always wins out, right? If the task order wants to put something on top of it, then yes, you have to make sure you do that. But you have to make sure you meet the minimum requirements of whatever, of what the task order states and what your GSA labor category states. Because what happens is the pricing that you pre-negotiated for your GSA schedule is based upon minimum education, minimum requirements, and the functional responsibility you disclose to GSA at the time of your award. If you put people in those areas that don't qualify, technically what happens is it becomes defective pricing or it's a false claim because you're actually, you could put, let's say if you need to fill in someone that has a bachelor's degree and 5 years of experience. You put someone in with a high school diploma and 2 years of experience, you're basically, we know you're not going to charge the same to the government. You're going to get a lower price. And say if something happens, the person doesn't qualify for the work, you're responsible for that, and it's false billing. It's all different types of things there. So it's very important that when you map, you meet the minimum requirements. The functional responsibilities are 100% accurate in the mapping. So you got to make sure that everything matches well, and the common sense comes in there too. So you kind of have to look at it that way.
That all makes so much sense. So I can tell you, Scott, the entire team here at Dun & Bradstreet Credibility Corp is thrilled to have you on one of our SupplierEdge webinars again. We ran a little over this time, but I couldn't help but keep wanting to dive in because the information really is top notch, and I know lots of people are going to find this super valuable, and presumably already have. So I want to thank everyone who joined us today. Really thank Captain Scott Davidson for your wonderful information, and can't wait to have you on another one of these webinars someday soon.
Great, Dustin, I appreciate it. And like I said, please, we'll have the information downloaded. If you need anything else, let us know. We'll be happy to answer questions.
Sounds wonderful. Thanks again. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.